Hey guys, I got an amazing news for all of you. You know how much I like Chessbrah content, that I'm a personally great friend, that I've been coach of Eric Hansen for so many years, but I've just found out that he defeated no one else but the world champion Magnus Carlsen. At the moment, he's competing in Airthings online tournament, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds, very serious one. Magnus Carlsen is competing, Shak Mamedyarov, Anish Giri, Levon Aronian, Krzysztof Duda, winner of the World Cup this year, and many other top guys. Eric Hansen, as one of the main streamers and strongest streamers in the world, is competing there as well. Yesterday, I made an interesting tweet on my Twitter, The Butcher Chess. So I said, an interesting trend in the world of chess these days, while Hikaru Nakamura convincingly won Grand Prix a few days ago, Eric Hansen did great yesterday in the Meltwater Championship Chess Tour. Streamers seem to do lately better than professionals, and that was yesterday. And yesterday he made like 2.5 out of 4 games, and I'm about to show you a fascinating game beating Black Magnus Carlsen in just 30 moves, and out of those 30 moves, 22 moves were theory. Fantastic win, and let's get straight to the point. So Hansen was black in this game, and Magnus played e4, Hansen went for e5. That's what he's been using lately against the top guys. And after knight f3, knight c6, of course, Magnus goes for nothing else but a Ruy Lopez. And that's what you use when you play against good guys. That's what you want to play, like traditionally on the top level. And of course, he's been doing this with so many great, efforts and games. And Eric went for a6. Bishop a4, knight f6, castles, played bishop e7, and after rook e1, he did b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, and short castle. I'd like to stop here. Right now, we're just analyzing one of the main lines of the Ruy Lopez defense, and here White can decide whether he wants to go and to break in the center with d4, where he allows Black to play bishop g4 to pin the knight, and in a way to kind of shake his center, especially pawn on d4, to attack afterwards. Or what Magnus did, to play h3, to avoid this bishop g4, and to go with a very easy, solid, and of course, traditionally the best move, h3. Here, the things are going in many directions, and there are like so many possibilities. For example, I know that Eric in the Pro League used against Magnus knight b8, and he lost the game with after a pretty tough fight. Here, he decided to play the closed variation of the Shigorin defense in this Ruy Lopez, so he went for knight a5. You know what? In Ruy Lopez, the light square bishop is the most important piece. So he went after this bishop, and Magnus, of course, that's why he played c3, not only to break in the center and to play d4, but also to hide this bishop after any knight a5. And here, Shigorin variation goes with c5, d4, and since d4 attacks the pawn on e5, you gotta defend this pawn or you have to take. If you take, that's a suggestion and advice for all of you, don't ever take because you don't want to lose the tension in the center, but play queen c7. He did it, and after knight bd2, once again, we go into the theoretical position with so many deviations. Last move by Magnus was knight e2. He wants to go with the knight on f1 to place it on g3 and slowly and gradually to improve his position on the king side by doing the attack and possibly going with some knight g3, knight f5 or knight h4, queen f3 and typical king side attacking ideas. I know that one of the Shigorin's variation is knight c6, d5, knight d8, where you put your knight once again back on e8, play g6, this knight goes on g7, and after f6, this knight goes on f7. And then eventually you would like to break with f5. Hansen decided to take on d4 and to go for another line. After c takes, knight c6. Of all the possible variations, this one is the most critical one, and it's considered to be the best for black. So after knight b3, Hansen went for a5. You know old rule, when the knight stands on b3, just harass it by a5 and a4, that the wing attack. And when you want to go with a5 and a4, you just want to go with kicking that knight away and weakening control of the center d4, mainly square. That's why Carlsen played bishop e3, and after a4, played knight bd2. There we go. After knight bd2, Hansen had to decide what to do here. And he came up with a very classic idea. A very classic idea like knight b4, threatening once again the light square bishop before he connects his pieces and plays rook c1 just in time and hides the bishop on b1 while the rook is on c1. But here he's going to be forced, and that's what Carlsen played. He had to play bishop b1 while the rook stands on a1. It's not a big deal, of course, he's going to play a3, but he also takes some time to reposition his knight from a5 and go back to a5. Eric played bishop d7. It's a normal move because you'll see afterwards this position could be possibly weak. Carlsen played a3. I still can't believe that I'm talking about Carlsen and Eric. You know, Carlsen is certainly the best player in the history of chess. And from another point of view, Eric Hansen is my great friend, and he's been my student for almost 10 years. So after knight c6, queen e2, going after the pawn on b5. So many moves and possibilities here, and both of these guys were just following the famous game between Karpov and Hort. Hansen went for queen b7 to defend the pawn on b5, and when Carlsen played bishop d3 to attack potentially weak pawn on b5, as I said, he also wants to include this rook on a1 and to put it back into the game. Unlike previously mentioned game between Karpov and Vlastimil Hort, where Hort played rook f to e8, Karpov played rook a c1, and after rook a b8, decided to take on e5, here Magnus decided to go with a little bit different plan. Eric went for rook a b8, which was a deviation in comparison to the game Karpov-Hort. He immediately defends the pawn on b5. Absolutely fine. Carlsen decides to keep this rook on a1 and not to go with rook a c1 or whatever, but he decides to go with rook e c1. He just wants to keep the rook on a1 in case Eric breaks with any b4, so the rook on a1 can keep an eye on the pawn on a3. And here, unlike the game that I found in the chess base, in the 21st move, Hansen makes a novelty, plays e takes d4. I very much like taking on d4. Yes, he does lose a tangent in the center, but from another point of view, he's willing to go with a rook on e8, take advantage of the queen on e2, and use the x-rays against this queen. You all know how important it is to put a rook on the file where the queen is. When Magnus captured knight e4, Hansen played knight e5, once again harassing this light square bishop. Magnus brought his bishop back to e2, and Hansen played a very nice prophylactic move, rook f to e8. Why? He just goes with this rook on the e file against the queen on e2. He's willing to go back with and put this bishop back on f8 and somehow to put pressure on both pawn on e4 and queen on e2. Magnus now shows that his plan with rook e c1 was probably wrong. He admits his mistake and plays rook e1. Eric plays great move, h6, because he prevents bishop g5 and he's willing to go with bishop f8, in which case bishop g5 will not be possible. Another great prophylactic move, and he wants to put a knight back on g6 and to make some pressure once again, like I said, against pawn on e4 and queen on e2. Magnus now reposition his rook and put it right back into the center, but he already wasted two tempi. After bishop f8, it's very annoying when you have a queen on the file where the rook stands. He played bishop b1 to move this bishop prophylactically, first of all, not to be on the c file, and another thing, maybe he just wants to put it sometime at a2. At the moment, he does a great job since he defends the pawn on e4. Eric went for b4. He breaks on the queen side, and after f4 brought a knight back on g6. f4, just like in FIDE type of defenses and these e4, e5 type of games, is usually a very risky move because all of a sudden, yes, black does have an isolated pawn on d6, but as a counterpart, we just have a pawn on e4 that is kind of weak. So this guy went for bishop d3, Eric captured, and he now made a beautiful move. Eric played a move thanks to which he won the game. He played queen b2, and Magnus probably completely forgot about this idea. Eric threatens to take on a3, but at the same time he threatens the knight on d4. How? He threatens knight f4. And all of a sudden, you can just see how Carlsen's position is about to collapse so fast. Carlsen plays rook b1, and Hansen came up with amazing tactics. You cannot take on b2 queen, because he would just take the queen, and afterwards take the rook on b2, and he would be up materially. Carlsen plays queen f1, and actually the whole point and the whole combination here was based on the queen c3, where you can't touch on f4 because the bishop is hanging, where you can't touch by bishop because the knight is hanging. Also, pawn on a3 looks weak. Magnus tried to close the things with the bishop b5. Eric put the knight back here, threatened the pawn on e4, threatened this bishop, pawn on e4, and probably out of complete desperation, Magnus played bishop a4 and resigned the game. I'm very happy. I'm very proud of this guy. He's one of my best chess friends, one of my most favorite students. Definitely my most successful student. And it's not everyday situation where you have a chance to commentate and analyze game of your friend and student who actually plays like this. Okay, he was my student, not anymore, of course. I just want to tell you one more thing. Currently in this tournament, he has an amazing score, and yesterday he just made some fantastic results and beat some guys like, I don't know, he beat Niemann, he beat Pragnanda, he beat Duda, winner of the World Cup, he beat Shakma Mejarov. Today he's beaten Carlsen, so this guy's having a tournament of his life. Go on, crush them till the end of the tournament, and congratulations for this amazing win. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.